Counter-Narrative News wanted to share something about the history of the Black Panther Party for self-defense and one of its leaders, indeed one of the people who really popularized the theory and the propaganda and the culture of the Black Panther Party and the broad black liberation kind of cultural, political aesthetic that they represented. That's Emory Douglas, former revolutionary artist and Minister of Culture of the Black Panther Party leadership. Emory Douglas's artwork is at the one time inspired by the political, cultural, ethical aesthetic of things like the burgeoning Black liberation movement, Black power movement in the USA, really encapsulated and personified by the person of Malcolm X. And Malcolm X's keen and intense sympathy and empathy and connectedness to the global grassroots and the revolutionary anti-colonial struggle and in the US of the black resistance is really epitomized by Emory Douglas. And of course, Emory Douglas in his art gives much and many thanks to Malcolm X in that regards. But Emory Douglas's art really feeds into the moment of the late 60s going into the 70s of the world revolutionary culture of the anti-colonial quote-unquote third world and black revolutionary struggles. And also himself is inspired by that same moment, historical moment as well. Emory Douglas is born in Michigan, and then he serves a stint in a youth offenders prison basically in his mid-teens, in which he learns how to do some print art and gets trained there. He then enters in the Black Arts movement, closely associated with people like Amiri Baraka, Leroy Jones, and then the leadership of the Black Panther Party in the form of Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, and Eldridge Cleaver. I mean, Cleaver is a deeply problematic figure, as is everyone, but exceptionally so in Cleaver's case. But nevertheless, these leadership basically recruit Emory Douglas into the party. Emory Douglas takes over the design of the Black Panther newspaper, which at its peak had nearly 500,000 copies in circulation every edition. And then he really kind of elevates the communication, the political propaganda and agitation of the party through his art in a really exceptionally and beautiful manner. So there's really two aspects of Emory Douglas's art which remain profound from its time, are still really electrifying and motivating in its effect from the late 60s into the 70s. Also, on the one hand, it's a deep love but militant, uncompromising solidarity with poor working class black resistance and their conditions, their oppression and poverty, but always pushing towards a revolutionary, liberating dignity. And you can have that especially in the way he artistically frames black women, be it mothers, aunties, grandmas, as being like the kind of backbone of the black community, suffering a great amount of oppression within that placement, and then adopting a revolutionary black power, Black Panther-esque resistance culture and action. And you can see this encapsulated through the armed nature visually of black women and black mothers, raising the next generation, inculcating the next generation with that similar revolutionary culture and ethic and practice. So that's just so incredibly beautiful about Emory's work. Then on the other hand, the other half to the kind of the complete global approach of Emory Douglas's art, if one may make this analysis, is his militant international solidarity and unity with revolutionary forces across the world, not least in Africa, but across the global south or the third world countries. Indeed, some of the third world revolutionary struggles and communities adopted Emory Douglas's art for themselves. So there's a famous poster of two black women with babes in arms with guns slung over their shoulders, this really powerful Pan-Africanist, black internationalist, militant aesthetic. This was adopted by the Havana-based OSPAL, the Organization for Solidarity with the Peoples of Africa, Asia and Latin America, which was an important initiative, radical initiative from the radical third world socialist movements at the time. And then you have the example of the Black Panther Party front page newspaper in which Emory Douglas designs the letter of the Black Panther leadership to the Vietnamese resistance, offering their own members as volunteers in the revolutionary liberation struggle against the imperialist occupation of that time, which was the USA state, and also the response of the Vietnamese resistance leadership in that offer from the Black Panther Party themselves. So that's really an example of the militant global unity of struggle that's encapsulated by the revolutionary politics of this time, particularly placing the relationship between the Black Panther Party for self-defense and the Vietnamese resistance. Then you have this beautiful picture, which is basically a black child holding up the scales of justice in a black fist, so incorporating the black working class youth and children and their ongoing struggle for the quest for liberation and justice, and their determination in the extended arm and the black fist to achieve that. So Emory Douglas kind of quote unquote remixes this piece into a solidarity piece with another vanguard historical revolutionary struggle that is of the Haitian people. So he remixes that to incorporate solidarity with Haiti. And then finally, we have Emory Douglas was the means by which the notion of the police force, the racist, brutal, pro-capitalist colonial police force, an arm of the colonial state, is depicted as the pig. Now, police depicted as pigs is not an invention of Emory Douglas, but Emory Douglas is definitely the person responsible for popularizing the notion of police as pigs. Quote, a low-natured beast that has no regard for law, justice, or the rights of people, a creature that bites the hand that feeds it, a foul, depraved traducer usually found masquerading as the victim of an unprovoked attack. End of quote. Anyone who's had any interaction with the police will recognize those words as very much relevant till this day. I mean, arguably it's an insult to pigs, who in that definition are very much nicer living beings on our planet than are the police force of the colonial state. So Emory Douglas is absolutely centrally, really solely responsible for popularizing the concept of the police as pigs, which is a really important historical contribution to revolutionary culture that Emory Douglas contributes and makes. Now finally, on some real direct experiences with Emory Douglas, of course I've been a supporter of the Black Panther Party for self-defense and its legacy ever since my teens, when I first get politically and culturally kind of self-reflective and kind of direct oneself into study of revolutionary histories and theories and struggles. However, I have a direct interaction with Emory Douglas by the latter part of 2008, where I personally host Emory Douglas and also Billy X. Jennings, or Bill Jennings, from the Black Panther alumni It's About Time, blackpantherparty.com website. And we have a host of a series of talks and events and in and around London, including a direct conversation with Paul Gilroy at the London School of Economics, including an event with Linton Kwesi Johnson and the Olive Morris Collective of the Brixton Panther Legacy in Brixton itself, and also a really successful and important event at the Tabernacle, which is the historical carnival village of Notting Hill, Ladbroke Grove, a historic and current black radical resistance and grassroots community there. Emory Douglas happens to be just a really gentle and a very lovely and beautiful, kind human being as well, but still, like many of the original leadership of the Black Panther Party that I've had the privilege and pleasure of interacting directly with, rest in peace in this regards, Eddie Marshall Conway, who we hosted as well at an event at the Brixton Library in 2016. Emory Douglas is a gentle person, very sensitive, but also it's combined with this great strength of sophisticated, experienced revolutionary militancy and leadership, which is still espoused, and you can see that still in the ongoing artistic productions of this great revolutionary leader. And then also through the Malcolm X movement, we directly interact with Emory Douglas in the Black Panther Research Project, which is 7 events hosted at the Brixton Library in circa 2017, 2018, if one's not mistaken. And the last interaction was I conducted an interview with Emory Douglas in and around the George Floyd uprising of the summer of 2020, which we would also signpost people to have a look at that on Twitter, on the Malcolm X Movement Twitter account, which is also a really fascinating and inspiring and informative interview with Emory Douglas. So many happy returns, Emory Douglas, who's 80 years young. May you have still a long life yet. Your contribution has been and continues to be very weighty, and we are very thankful at the global grassroots.